This story is the aftermath of Battery.Failure.Statue.mp3. Now, in this AU reverse, Steve decided to destroy the Rainbow Hub first, along with Saber and Orange Steve, while the Darkness did its thing elsewhere. When Reverse Steve gets into the Rainbow Hub, he destroys Orange Steve and Saber, taking the Rainbow Crystals for his plan later. After a little time, Reverse and the Darkness finished the portal to the Void, freeing Nightmare and Void Steve. Reverse now gives the Rainbow Crystals to Void to make Rainbow Void. As weeks went by, their army grew and they planned a siege on the Yellow Steves due to them being the most powerful. The Yellow Scouts saw the army and informed the true Yellow King. The size of the army concerned the Yellow King. The Yellow King told his people he needed warriors, and they were going on the defensive for this fight. The Yellow Steves were told to stay where they were because this fight could break out at any moment. Light Steve would also be assisting in the fight, but their efforts would be futile because Light Steve would be destroyed by a Nightmare who wanted revenge. The Yellow Steves would soon fall. Some tried teleporting but were intercepted and destroyed. Many tried running, and 2 were successful but injured. They ran to the Orange Village, informing them of what had just happened, but were interrupted by a smaller wave of darkness that approached the village as some ran. Others took refuge in the main building. Some barricaded the door and window and made a staircase to the roof. Others made weapons, bows, and armor, but to no avail as a darkness beast broke through the building, letting more darkness in, destroying the Orange Steves and the 2 injured Yellow Steves. This time, the Steves that ran did not survive. The next kingdom to fall was the Green Kingdom, then the Violet Kingdom, and then the Great Library. The Indigo and Blue Steves would be a little more difficult due to their location, but they would soon fall. But not without Galaxy Steve trying to protect his home, the Middle World. The battle was lost, with darkness from the Void corrupting the Middle World and Void getting the upper hand. Lastly, the Red Kingdom. The only reason they were able to find it was due to Reverse. The apprentice heard Red Steve's in panic, so he went outside and saw Darkness, Void Steve, and Reverse. He wanted to help but knew he'd be destroyed. So he ran to the leader's house to tell him while they heard darkness outside. They took the armor and weapons on the armor stands and ran to the lab while telling people to follow them. They hear Professor Red call out from behind a weird redstone machine. They look behind it and find a room they never saw before with a Steve they never saw before and Professor Red. As they all entered the room, the door closed behind them. Professor Red ran to Leader. He couldn't keep the secret about the core anymore and needed to tell him. As he was telling the leader about its power, they heard a loud explosion along with the weird machine Steve thing announce one of the 4 redstone towers has been destroyed. Hearing this, Professor Red knew what he had to do. He told the leader he is going to blow up the core. The leader, now knowing about the power of the core, did not like this idea, but Professor Red explained it was their only option, or they would all die for nothing. As they heard another explosion, the leader reluctantly agreed. The leader was confused by the professor. He had never seen him like this. Usually he acted weird and a little bit insane, but now he's acting serious. Professor Red told them to go through a tunnel that leads to the apprentice's house and then teleport as far as they can. He knew it probably wouldn't matter due to the core have 5% of the sun's energy, but they could still try. The door opened, and the professor told them where the door was at. They said goodbye and went their separate ways as the machine teleported itself and Professor Red to the elevator. When they got past the security system, Professor Red told the machine to stay there and warn him if the door opens. Seconds later the elevator door opens, revealing Void Steve as he flies to them, avoiding the security systems. As the machine warned Professor Red, it was ripped apart by Void. "Hello again, Google's long time no see," said Void in a calm and threatening voice. "It's Professor now," Professor Red said as he threw a glass vial at Void, but Void was unaffected. As Void approached, the only thing he could do was finish trying to blow up the core, but he wasn't fast enough as Void grabbed him by the neck and carried him to the end of the platform. "I didn't want it to end like this," Void said as he dropped him. As Professor fell farther, his life flashed before his eyes, his assistant with the elites, his friendship with the leader, and his friend, Cole. He flashed back to reality, Reaching in his pocket for the prototype teleporter, he hoped this worked. The reason he didn't just use his powers to teleport him is because in this AU, if you're teleported by an object machine, you can't be intercepted. As it teleported him, he felt a large pain in his legs. His legs broke due to him teleporting while he was falling. He didn't have time to tend to his legs as he dragged himself to the control panel and hitting the last buttons. Then he felt another pain through his chest. Void had punched him so hard it went through his body, but Professor wasn't giving up yet. He just needed to hit one last button. As he hit the button, he collapsed on the ground, and as he hit the ground, the core explodes, killing Void, Reverse, Even Nightmare, Dark, Faceless, Apprentice, Leader, and the other 5 Red Steves.